Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Whitaker, and whether you are a regular listener or perhaps this is your first time, either way, it's great to have you here with us today. Now, during any career path, there will always be people that have an impact on your future. They'll often be the people who have taught you something, and it's the teachers in our lives that often set us on the path that we pursue. Now, my guest today is Chris Baran. He is a hairdresser, a former salon owner, educator, and trainer of educators. He's also a fellow podcaster and a global ambassador. But at his core, he is a great teacher. And I know that he would have had a huge impact on the many people he has worked with over a very long career. Chris has worked in many areas of the industry and in the process has amassed a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And so today we're going to dig into his background and really focus on what he is possibly best known for. And that is his role as a great educator. So in today's episode, we're going to discuss how do you know whether you have what it takes to be an educator, how education is changing in the salon industry, and what salon owners should put in place to create a culture of learning within their salon, and so much more. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Chris Baran.
Well, thank you, Anthony. It's an absolute pleasure. We've known each other for years. Sometimes it was in the passing and sometimes it was just chatting with one another. And I have to say that it's a pleasure to know you. I've always had the utmost respect for you and what you do. And it's an absolute pleasure to be on with Grow My Salon Business.
Oh, well, listen, thank you very much. It's meant to be me big noting you. So I really appreciate you saying that. Okay, so yeah, this has been a long time coming, and I've wanted to have you on for ages, so it's great to finally have this opportunity to talk to you because you do have a great reputation in the industry, and you have sort of done lots of things in the industry, a little bit like me. You've been a stylist, you've been a salon owner, podcaster, educator, and you're very much an educator of educators. And that's where I have the absolute utmost respect for you. But I want to sort of jump in a little bit and talk about something that you've done and that I've done, which not everyone feels comfortable with. And that is that over the decades that we've been in the industry, we have constantly evolved. Mm-hmm. And I just want to ask you that straight off the top. What is it that drives you professionally over the, getting on for, 60 odd years or something? Am I right saying that? You said 60 years, didn't you?
It'll be 60 years in July the 2nd, 27. It'll be my 60th year. I started when I was 3, if you're doing the math. In the industry.
Wow,
60 years.
Man, that is absolutely fantastic.
A lot of time for screwing up, let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, you've learned a lot. So there's a lot of wisdom there. And actually, that's really what I want to tap into on this call is the sort of wisdom that you've, got. So let me just go back to that. What is it that drives you constantly to keep on evolving? Because you're still right at the front of the queue in so many different ways.
Well, let me put it to you this way. And I'm going to give that just a little different twist. It's going to take us to the same end. Number one is I think the thing that makes me who I am is I'm just extremely curious. And I think if curiosity was a value that you put into it, and maybe it is, but that's probably one of the values that I have is I'm just extremely curious. My wife always says that I'm just a fountain of useless information. However, I want to take you back to that because when you say about evolving, and it's exactly what I did, but I want to bring this story to Christine Schuster, who was the president of education for LP, L'Oreal Professional Product Division. At one time, she said, I want you to teach a class on how we can help to people reinvent themselves. Because her words to me were, you're always reinventing yourself. And I had to have a think about that because reinvent to me means start something new. And I like the way you put it about evolving because I think that's what I've done. And to me, it's if you're curious, and I'm constantly bored with what I do, and let me give you the backstory in it and why she wanted me to talk about reinvention. It was because I think as it's coming up 60 years in the business, but I think it's been about 45, 48 years that I've been in education side. And as I traveled through, I got into education in the mid to late 70s. It was about 76 that I started educating, and that's an interesting story. However, it started off, and then when I started to get known, I was the design guy because I was a Sassoon freak. I didn't work for Sassoons, but I was a Sassoon freak, and I was a design guy. So I was the design guy, and then we hit the 80s, and I was the perm guy, and then I was the avant-garde guy, and I was the color guy, and so on. And then I became the training guy. And that's when that started to happen because I got hooked on education. I got hooked on adult education. And that's why Christine said to you, I want to talk about how you've reinvented. And I think that's the hook in there, Anthony, is that first of all, I've never done really anything purposefully, if that's the right word, purposely. Because it's just to me, and it was an evolution of whether it was boredom, whether it was curiosity, whether it was wanting to learn. I would put myself more as a lifelong learner. What I've become along the way is someone that I've found that if I get hooked on something, I dig deep, I research deep, and I just want to know more and more and more about it. And I literally immerse myself. And so I think that to me, if you can think about hairdressing trends as they move along and you move from one trend into the next, they kind of overlap. I always say like trends have a 6-year cycle where I always call it 2 years in, 2 years hot, 2 years out. And there's an overlap in there. And I think that's what happened to me, Anthony. I've never purposely said, this is what I want to do. But I got hooked on the curiosity pulled me in. I immersed myself in it. And then I've learned that if I want to really learn something, that I have to teach it. Yeah. And I think that's what it was, is that, I admire people that say, here's what I want to do. This is my goal. This is where I want to go. And then they go there. I've never done that. I'm more of a want guy. Here's what I want to do right now. And that's when that pulls me and draws me in.
No, that's really interesting. And I like that distinction between evolving versus reinvention. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, over the decades, incredible music artists like Madonna or like Prince or like, David Bowie were known for reinvention. Like they would do an album, it would be brilliant. Yeah. And it's so easy to just continue being who you were because you knew it worked. But what they would do every time is they would come out with something that takes everything in a whole new direction. And I really, respected that. And because I think that's super hard to do, because it's sort of showing that I can be successful in lots of different areas, and you've been successful in lots of different areas. One of the things that I mentioned it to you before, I actually got an email from someone the other day asking me a question. They were saying that they'd been a hairdresser for 7 years. And they asked me, how do you know when you're ready to open a salon? How do you know if you'll be a good salon owner? And at the time, I was sort of researching you for this conversation today. And I thought, that's a really interesting question to ask Chris. Not how do you know, if you have what it takes to be a salon owner, but how do you know if you have what it takes to be a good educator? Because you have become, the educator's educator. And a lot of people in our industry, they want to become educators. They see it as a progression. It's not necessarily. It's just a different path for people. But, how would you answer that question? What does it take to be an educator? And how do you know whether you've got that inside you or not?
Well, I'll give you just the 2-word answer about how do you know if you have what it takes? You don't.
Okay.
It's an immersion thing. Let me put this in, I think, a way that everybody in our industry will know. Whether you're hiring somebody or whether you wanted to be a hairdresser, you just made the choice. And then you found out, and we know in our business that we've got people that wanted to be hairdressers and then they bail for whatever reason. So you don't really know for sure. I wish it was as simple as 2 + 2, but it's not. If you want to become an educator, it's a little different. And let me put it to you this way. Is the reason I find why salon owners or people that are industry, they say, I love what I do. I love what I do, whether it's color, finishing, cutting, whatever. And they become really good at it. They've invested, pick a number, 3, 10, 20 years. And then they say, I really love what I do. I'd love to give back. Because I find hairdressers as a whole are caregivers. We want to help. The problem is that they're two different beasts. Teaching, educating, and as a skill set. Hairdressing is a skill set. And the problem becoming, just like I did, I sucked at teaching when I first came in. Okay. But I was terrible at it. And the problem is if you just use one experience, if you just did one haircut and you said I sucked at it because you couldn't get your bob even on the same side and you bailed, or worse still, you didn't have anybody around you that could help you learn how to fix that bob, eventually you're going to get frustrated and you're either going to say, well, I'm not going to cut anymore. I'll go to something else, and you'll develop a different skill in hairdressing. And then you'll build on that. And if you don't build any of them well, you'll just say, well, this industry sucks, and I'll go away. Is that making sense so far?
Yeah, no, it is. It is.
So that's the hook that I say to people. And why I say you don't ever know until you get into it. And I think there's another word that I think is used in I don't mean to offend anybody if you use this word. I think it's fine if you use it. I just find that the word passionate is a really overused cliche word in our business. I'm passionate about what I'm doing. Well, I'm passionate about watching TV too, but I'm not going to spend my life doing it. The problem is if you get on, I'm good at what I do in cutting or whatever that skill is, and you say, therefore, I'm a good speaker, a good teacher, you're setting yourself up to fail. Mm. It's not that you shouldn't become a teacher. It's get into it, start teaching, but then get somebody to help you. Like when you and I think I might be a couple of my teeth might be a little bit longer than yours.
Yeah, but I think you're the only one I've ever had on the podcast that's older than me, so it's great.
Yeah, and the point is that there was nobody around that taught you how to teach when we were in the game, and when we started in the game, I should say. And now there's all sorts of courses, places you can go, people that can help to train you. And that's kind of where I've kind of evolved from, where I said, look, there's thousands of people out there, hundreds of thousands that can cut hair, color hair, perm hair, every bit as good and better than I can do. So what's my next area of evolution that I can do? And when I got hooked on teaching and adult education, it was a whole different level of awakening for me, because I could see all the areas that I missed on and passed on in the past. And I think that's that's what's great about our industry now, that there is areas where you can go, people you can go, things that you can learn, how to get the foundations of teaching so that you can slowly improve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. If you're sitting in an audience, and I know you sit in audiences sometimes, and you watch someone else on the stage, and imagine you're sitting there and you're looking at them and you're thinking, wow, he or she is a great educator. What is it that makes a great educator?
That's a good question. Nowadays, that make me sound even older? Nowadays, I feel like I should be looking out my window at some kid crossing my lawn. Go, get off my lawn! So nowadays, wow, I can't even believe I said that. But I think that if you notice great educators, that they combine two things. They combine entertainment and they combine education. And it's not just dry. It's, the standard word I think that a lot of us use is called edutainment. Yeah. But here's what I'm digging a little deeper now. And I'm going to differentiate between stage and salon teaching, because stage teaching is more about performance driven And salon teaching is more about one-on-one. Even if it's one to many, you can be teaching in a salon, in an academy, in a beauty school, and you can have 1 to 10 to 15 to 20, maybe 25 or even more. But the biggest thing that makes an educator an amazing educator is discovery. And what, unfortunately, educators, myself included, teach the way they were taught. I was a product of a company years ago, of a brand, not that I was associating with, but who I learned how to cut. And the way they taught me is the way that I taught people. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. And at the time in the 70s, it was, the educators, there was a hierarchy, and you would talk down to the people. You would say, I'm going to do this. Do what I do. I tell you, you listen. I tell you, you do. And it became very much about tell, very little about discovery, right? As I'm copying everything that you're supposed to do. And by copying, I built in muscle memory, etc. And don't get me wrong, that company made me who I am when it came to cutting. It made me who I am when it came to discipline. It made me who I am insofar as pushing myself further and wanting to be better. So nothing against them. The problem is I came away teaching the way I was taught. And I was in Canada at the time, teaching across the country. And it was more about telling people what they did wrong and how to correct it. And I was notorious for being in a room and for whatever reason, maybe it wasn't my intent. Maybe it was, I don't know. Maybe it was my ego. It was about me. And it was about, look at, I always remember and go back to, what was it, Saturday Night Live with, look what I can do, and it wasn't about them. And consequently, there was crying, tears. And quite frankly, there was areas in Canada that wouldn't hire me again because, quite frankly, and I hope if you're PG correct on this, but I was a bit of an asshole. And consequently, but that was the way I was, and to my point, I taught the way that I was taught. And that's not the way you can teach anymore. Yeah, exactly. You can't teach that way, and the idea is once I learned to be a good teacher, that number one, you have to have the information. You have to be you got to have the knowledge, correct? And then you have to have confidence behind it. And then you have to have a degree of authenticity about you. And that makes you congruent with the audience. It makes them want to connect with you. And what I found along the way was when I made it more about my vulnerability and that I was the same as they were. And when I said, I know exactly what you're going through because I was there. I lost clients because of it. I made mistakes because of it. And the more vulnerable that I was, the more that they connected with me. I'll give you another example. And I'm sure you saw it because he was my hair hero. My first hair hero was Vidal Sassoon. And when Gordon Miller did and made the Sassoon movie, and I remember being in New York and watching the movie. Gordon.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No.
What did I say?
You said Gordon Miller. It made me think for a minute. So hang on, that's not Gordon Miller didn't make that movie. So Michael Gordon. Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic movie.
Michael Gordon. Thank you. And I remember being there, and Vidal was actually there, and I was watching the movie, and I was enthralled by it, even knowing he was in the room. But I think the mistake in the movie, they were 3/4 of the way through it before Vidal actually showed his vulnerability in his first marriage. And that's when I connected with them. That's when I went, you're a human being just like me. And that was an example of the more that today's educator can show their vulnerabilities and to connect with people so that they know it's like the Me Too. They've got a Me Too image. I understand because you're just like me. And the more that, and the other thing that I learned is when I watch somebody that's teaching in a salon or a hands-on environment, and somebody makes a mistake and they can learn to congratulate them for making a mistake, that's when I go, you're good. You're really good.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. No, I like that. I was thinking you were going to pick on that word that you opened with, curiosity, because I think that's what makes a good teacher as well, wasn't it? I mean, I spent most of my I spent 10 years at Sassoon, most of the time as a teacher.
Yeah.
And there's that expression that I want you to talk about, which is, because it definitely applied to me, which is people teach what they most need to learn.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I unashamedly wanted to, when I passed my tests and I started working in the salons, I unashamedly wanted to get into the school because I recognized that, one of the things that teachers said to me in the era that you were talking about was you'd be sat in an audience and you'd put your hand up and say, how do you do such and such? And they would say something like, well, my work just speaks for itself. Or, It's like the absolute way to shut an audience down and to shut anyone down. When people get on stage and go, well, there's nothing really to say, my work speaks for itself. But that thing about, for me, becoming a teacher was that I did want to understand it at a deeper level myself. And I knew that as soon as you had to articulate it to someone else, that you had to cut all the bullshit out of it and just actually give them the right bit of advice, the right bit of information, the reason why. And you had to do it as succinctly as what you possibly could. And that's what sort of drove me in that area. So what are your thoughts about you teach what you most need to learn? How does that relate to your experience?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, the light bulbs are going off in my brain right now. So thank you for putting me back on track on there, because I think, number one, it is curiosity. Number two, you do need to teach if you want to really learn something, teach it. That doesn't mean that you know everything about it. And if you can use that and say, like, imagine if somebody said, how do you do this? And it might, the other, you said it, the way of, well, my work speaks for itself. The other one that really turned me off was, I invented this. Well, see, then it becomes about me. It becomes about me, not them. And I think that there's two things, like my good friend, my business partner, Chris Moody, and I always talk about is when we're teaching people how to become better at what they do, we do an exercise with them we call it teach in the dark. And the part that I think that where most teachers, educators, I'm not saying get it wrong, but don't have it right yet, is language that they can use as if, imagine, okay, I'm going to give a scenario so that we can understand of why we talk about teach in the dark. Imagine you're teaching a very precise technique in whatever discipline that you're in, and you're not using really precise language. And I'm really in tune, and I write down, just like I'm doing right now, and I have my head down. You're doing something, but you're not describing it. I'm taking my notes, and I look up, and we're past it, but I didn't get the language that made me understand what you were doing or know what you were doing. Now I get caught in a loop, and I'm thinking, what was it he said? What was he said? What did I miss? What did I miss? And I'm missing the next 3 or 4 things.
Yeah.
And now I'm frustrated. Now when I go to try to do it, I'm angry. You see it? And I think that's one of the things that if we get caught up in understanding that there's more steps in something that I'm teaching than even I know when I'm teaching it. So I have to think about it in the state, in like, well, first of all, Chris and I always talk about what we call is a standard, what a good one looks like. So that's why you always show a benchmark. And then we'll say, well, there's stages. Well, if somebody, like you said, if I'm talking about scissor mechanics and I'm talking about, I'm cutting the hair and I'm using palm to palm cutting and et cetera, et cetera. And if somebody doesn't even know how to hold the scissors properly, we've got to go back and talk about how you hold the scissors properly. Okay. And then if I see that and inside there, and I need to talk about the steps of how to engage the scissors with my fingers. You see, that's where true learning happens. And then I need to reinforce and go back to them and say, you tell me back what you learned so I know you heard right. You see it? So I think that's part of what we're saying here. And I'm going to do a little deeper dive, because I said I was going to give, in that first answer, I said I was going to give you the two parts, the pat answers, and I was going to go deeper. And I didn't get to the deeper. And I think that you and I shared something in there, like you shared it the same way as I felt it when I was going on stage. I did something on top, something that I needed to get out of it. That makes sense?
Yeah, totally.
You know, I needed to learn it. So therefore I'm teaching it, but it's my need, right? And I think that this was, again, I'm not smart enough to think of this stuff on my own. This is something that was an epiphany for me the other day when my business coach said this to me. I was talking about being on stage. I was talking about, I think a lot of it do it for a number of reasons of what our need is. Is it the validation that we get out of teaching? And this is the deeper part. What's the need that we have? There's something that we want to get from the audience. Is it the validation of them coming up to you after and going, great class? Or is it the applause or the standing ovation? Or is it just the love that you get from the audience, the appreciation? But you see, as long as one of those are there, it's our need that needs to be fulfilled. And a great teacher is going to say, I'm just teaching what I teach because I know it, I love it, I believe in it, and I'm just doing it solely to get my message across to you, not because I need anything from you.
And that's a hard point to arrive at, because I think it's human to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when you do an event and you come off stage and people give you an applause or pat on the back or say that was great or whatever. It's human to feel good. Do you know what I mean? I admire anyone who can sort of let go of that need 100%, because it's not a bad feeling, so to speak.
Yeah. But to that point, I just want to make sure we clarify something here. I'm not saying anybody should step off stage, walk away and say, I don't need anything. You can still let all that stuff happen. It's just that you don't need it. And I'm going to take that a step further. Yeah. Up and until I'd say 2 weeks ago, I had all of those things. I still do. What I'm trying to learn is, and I'll give you an example. This was like about 2-3 weeks ago that he gave this example. And I was away and I was doing a class, and it was a hands-on class, and we did it for like about 18 people, just me, 18 people. I had no support, just me, hands-on, 18 people. And when I went in, I just took on that attitude of, I don't want anything from you. I'm just going to give myself and all my knowledge to you, and I'm going to handle the thing. I'm not going to think about, I don't have help. I don't have this. How am I going to deal with this? And you know what? It wasn't that it was an enlightening moment, but it was the fact that when I just gave myself to the audience and said, I'm just giving everything that I have, and I didn't want anything, the class was, in my mind, it was one of the better classes that I had done. And people after still said all those things, but I found that the validation was there, things I was probably still looking for. But during that moment of teaching, that's all it was. It was just about giving and teaching.
I'm trying to distill some words from what you are saying as a summary, right?
Yeah.
About that question that sent us off in this direction, which was what makes a good teacher. Well, how do you know when your teaching is your path? And I wrote down humility. You didn't say that, but you've said that with everything else. Humility. I wrote down curiosity. You did say that. Honesty. It's not the same as humility, but honesty to not have to, to not have to talk a load of crap to make yourself look good. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, I can remember when I was a young hairdresser just starting out, I was watching someone do this haircut. It was a graduated bob. I'd never seen a graduated bob before. And I was looking at the back of this haircut with the way the hair just sort of built up on top of itself, the graduation. And I was looking at it thinking, oh my God, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And I said to the guy who'd done the haircut, I said, how do you do that? And he looked at me, and maybe this is what made me become a teacher. He said, feeling. It's
Oh,
just feeling. And I just, even then, I thought, what a load of bloody nonsense. You can be
yeah.
taught that just like anybody else. And
Yeah.
so it was sort of those frustrations, I think, that drove me to be a teacher. Anyway,
Exactly.
listen, we can talk for ages, and I haven't got through half the questions I wanted to ask you about. No, not even nearly. So I do want to get through a couple more of them because I think they're important in the time we've got. You know, you have been in the industry. When did you start?
Uh, it was, it
Was it in the
was,
70s?
yeah, in the 70s.
Right.
It was July 2nd, 1967.
Well, so that's not in the 70s. That's in the
Yeah.
60s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, the 70,
I
yeah.
started in the 70s,
Yeah.
1978. So a lot of water had gone under the bridge for both
Yeah.
of us, but even more for you, because when you look back over that 60 years, the changes in the industry have been phenomenal. The way everything evolved, whether it was, well, not just the fashion, but, the attitudes and education and the technology. And so what I want to ask you about is here we are now, 2025. Um, a big event happened 5 years ago, and that sort of changed a lot of things in the world.
Mhm.
What impact has that had on education and you as the role of an educator now? How has education changed since, that event at 2019?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that it's evolved along the way, and I think everything is really kind of changed in here. And I know that we're referring to the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that the pandemic really did create. I think it was happening before the pandemic. It was exacerbated by the pandemic,
Mm.
and we live. I can't believe it. I feel like I should be yelling, "Get off my lawn!" again, because um, we've turned into a swipe right society.
Yeah.
Everything is immediate. And please don't get me wrong. I don't say it's wrong.
Mm,
I just say it's different.
mm,
I was listening to something the other day and everybody's talking about the Gen Zs and the mindsets and their values and they want everything. And I hear people, pardon my language, but pissing and moaning about the new generation. Well, listen, we were all a new generation and we all evolved and every one of the generations that came along did something different. So I think we have evolved and we've turned into a swipe right society. And as I said, it just got worse or better or more with the pandemic. And I think where it's evolved to in the last 5 years, particularly, is the difference. I think if you take a look at my era, I'm a baby boomer. Don't hate me, young people.
Me too.
But I take great responsibility for some of the things that are going on, and I want to speak to owners, educators right now, teachers in schools right now. Is if you're from a different era, I would ask you a simple question. It's evolved. Education has evolved. Their attitudes have evolved. So who needs to change, them or you? And I think that as long as we understand that everything is evolved, that's just a part of our future, that people from the previous generations have to change or go away.
Mm.
So, for instance, I talk to salon owners all the time. I mean, the one thing I found, Anthony, is that what I'm really good at is my curiosity makes me a good system developer. And I've had to develop it into cutting systems. I've had to develop it into associate training programs, et cetera. So that keeps me involved with salon owners all the time. And the constant thing that I hear about is them complaining about the Gen Zs. And he said their mindset is different. And, even if you look at, there was somebody that was out there that redid Maslow's hierarchy of needs to accommodate the Gen Zs, where safety is number one, with safety is number one in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as theirs is just comfort. And I don't think if you really look at it and magnify both side by side, I don't think it really fits. However, theirs is comfort and need first. They're not necessarily worried about making a gazillion dollars. They do want to have balance in their life. As a baby boomer, I go, what the hell is that? But if they want more time off, they don't want to work as many hours, and they don't want to work a 5-day week and whatnot. I think we need to change on our education. We need to change in our salon business so that we're accommodating the new generation that can come along. If you don't want to work 5 days a week, great. What do you want to work? Do you want to work 3 days? Great. We'll work 3 days. How many hours do you want to work in there? If they say 3, I'll say, you know what? Maybe I should find you another place that you're happy in. But if you're saying, look, I want to work 3 8-hours a day, great. Let's get you accommodate 3 8-hours a day, and I'll find somebody else that can accommodate for the rest of those times. See? If it's about education, we live in a swipe right, and you can tell how much I know in there. Is it swipe right or swipe left? Whatever. I don't spend a lot of time on that app. However, what I do know is that if I'm an educator, I can't teach the way I taught a baby boomer the way I teach a Gen Z. Baby boomers, myself, if I don't think that you're doing a good job and I think it's a bunch of El Toro Caca you're teaching me, I will still show respect and I'll still sit there. I'll form an opinion. I'll leave at the end. I just won't enjoy it. But when you live in a swipe society, up, down, left, right, and if a Gen Z is sitting in your audience, they're going to tune out and they're going to leave. They're going to jump on their phone or they're just going to walk out and they'll swipe. And the only way that you can do that and change that, because now still remember, they're still human beings. They still want to be coached. They still want to improve. But you can't do it by telling. The reason they're swiping right is they're not being entertained. They're not finding it funny. They're not finding it's not a great cat video. So I'm going to find a better cat video. So when we're educating, we've got to make it fun. We've got to make it interactive. You've got to engage them and get them doing something in the first, 5 minutes of the class so that they're actually engaged. And as long as you can still maintain a relationship with them and connect with them, keep them engaged, have fun with them, they're still human beings. They'll want to learn from you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good insights there. In line with that, but not in the context of educating an audience, a lot of people open salons, me included when I opened my salons, totally unprepared for the reality of what that was all about.
Yeah.
And one of the things that many salon owners never give any thought to is a responsibility that they actually have, which is to provide education for those people on their team. What would you say to someone opening a salon now that would be the advice that you'd give them about how to create a learning environment for the people that are on their team, so that you fulfill that responsibility of growing people, training people, coaching people in the technical, creative side of what we do specifically?
Yeah, I'm a big word guy, and it's, again, like I say, a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about in here, I'm not smart enough to think of my own. I read, I get it from other people, and I'm a great accumulator of knowledge. And I think that if learning is something that we do, education is pivotal in creating somebody, is increasing any of our teammates' abilities, etc. Somebody said, it was my coach that said something to me the other day that I thought was truly impactful when it came to an owner employee, teammate, call it whatever you will, relationship. And he said, if there's not a place for me to grow into, then I'm just this far away from leaving. I'm just looking for something else. So what I would advise people to use is as opposed to a learning environment is a growth environment. And I'm going to tell a story about a young lady, and I know there's many out there. I was at a Tangle Salon in just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and she has 1,700 square feet. All of her people have been with her for anywhere from when they start, the very few leave. She helps them all get a house. She helps them all. I don't mean she buys it for them. She helps them to plan for how they get a house, how they own their own car, how they're, many of them 6-figure earners, and just about growth. And so she is huge into education. And the hit word that I would use in there is, I think if we can all change that word from learning to growth, same thing with more. I think that's what keeps people loyal. It's what keeps people wanting to work for you. And they see the insight that they can make more money with the employer than they can going with entrepreneurship on their own. And if they still want to do that and entrepreneurship is their game, they're going to leave. So I think the thing is how do you make people put in a growth environment so that people are educated and learning and growing for them and their family so that they have stability, safety, and so on. And I think that I'm going to take that's the side of an example of this growth where people don't want to leave. And I'm going to tell you just a statement. I know you have a wide range of leadership, so this is more what I'm going to call I'm going to call U.S. based mentality. And you can probably tell me better because you've been in the UK, you've been in Oz, you've been in all sorts of places, and you can tell me how this theory that I'm going to espouse is works across the board. But I noticed in America is that we have this cultural thing that we have when it comes to business of leaving a salon and opening my own business, where we put a spotlight on the person that is in the name. Harry's Hair Haven is the shingle above the salon. It's all about Harry. Harry is great at what he or she does. They're good at they have a particular talent. They charge the most. Everybody is supposed to live up to Harriet's level of expertise with me. And we put we shine that light on them, and that's all about how you attract clients, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that sets a tone where they're working in their business rather than on their business as the owner. And I think the biggest mistake that most salon owners make over time is they try to keep that validation going, and they're working in the business, making money to pay bills rather than on their business of vision, education, growth for my people, and the longer you've been business. And I know because, I was Harry, that was the mentality that I had. That's why I see it in other people. That's why so many businesses fail, because they're busy working in the business rather than on the business with their numbers and their vision and having a business coach and making sure that they've got an environment that everybody excels and everybody wins. And I think the more that we can do that, the more that we can help, the more that salon owners can become better leaders than technicians.
Yeah.
I think that's the key.
That is exactly where I'm at with you. And that's a perfect place to begin to wrap that up, because it's that word that you finished up with, literally, leaders. I think that is what there is a bit of a drought of in the, not just in the industry. I think the world needs better leadership these days. The industry is no different. we need good leadership. We need strong leadership. And if you open up a salon, you so often go into it unprepared for the reality of, leadership, the responsibility that comes with that. But listen, we've got a ton of stuff we can talk about forever. Before we started recording, I said to you, now, Chris, I'm going to get you to talk about stuff that I've not heard you talk about before. And you were like, yeah, fine, great. And I want to congratulate you because, you've covered a lot of ground. And I love, we're a very visual industry, and that's important. But I've always been intrigued by not just what people do with their hands, but what goes on up here, how they think. And I think there's a lot of really good wisdom that you've imparted today about the thinking side of what it is that makes someone successful in our industry. There were little nuggets planted right the way through the conversation, but that last bit you just finished up on was fabulous. So listen, we'll wrap up with that. But whereabouts can people connect with you on Instagram or any other social media channels?
Yeah, it's just Coach Chris Baran, and Baran is Baran, as in the Ukrainian spelling, means ram, but Baran. So Coach Chris Baran, and you can do that. You can also go to Trainer's Playbook, and you can see everything inside trainersplaybook.com, and you can see all the stuff that we have to offer in there. And if anybody wants to connect with me or whatever, just you can do same thing, Coach Chris Baran, and you can do that on Facebook, Insta, whatever.
Fantastic. Okay, well, listen, I'll put those links on our website, growmysalonbusiness.com, and in the show notes for today's podcast, wherever you're listening to it. So if you have been listening to this episode with Chris Baran and have enjoyed it, then please do me a favor and share it with people who would also enjoy it, because there's been a lot of wisdom there. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. So to wrap up, Chris, thank you very much for being on this week's episode of Grow My Salon Business Podcast.
It's been absolutely my pleasure.